How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to AFTV Live. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Hit the like button first and foremost. Make sure you subscribe. Put the notification bell on. All of that, people. Show some love. And show some love to my guest today. We've got Nick in the building. He's got a YouTube channel. It's in the title. So make sure you show him some love. And we're going to talk Arsenal. We're going to talk some of the rumours going around. We're going to talk about imminent new contracts for Ramsdale and Saka. Even though with the latter, we've been hearing imminent for the past few months. It seems like they're patiently waiting their time about it. And I'm going to discuss with Nick why that may be. And we're also going to talk about our recruitment strategy this summer with the transfer window coming up real soon, people. I know there's still a few games left of the Premier League season, but the transfer window is around the corner and next season is also around the corner. But first and foremost, let's introduce Nick. What are you saying, Nick? All good?
I'm good, brother. Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
First and foremost, how you feeling after that Newcastle win? Because we've actually never done this, me and you one-on-one talking, and I just want to get your feeling around Arsenal. The other day I done a live. I asked people, do they still believe City will drop points in 2 out of their last 4 games? How are you feeling about the situation at the moment?
I think City will drop points. Whether they drop enough points for us to capitalise and go on and win the title is a different conversation. But I think if we can't win it, we have to run it as close as possible. I think all of this stuff is going to play into the psychology of the players next season. We've seen with the players when we had a bit of a fault at capturing top 4 last season, they've really come out this season with a reaction. And I think that this pain of potentially missing out and running it as close as possible will be big fuel to go in one step further next season.
Yeah, use the pain of nearly getting there as motivation if we're not to get over the line. I mean, last season I looked at it in a similar way. We used the pain of missing out on top 4 to improve ourselves and get that cutting edge that led us to a challenge this season, potentially a league title. Obviously some people do still believe, and we'll see. Everton away from Man City this weekend's a big one, and we've got Brighton at the Emirates, but this one is going to be predominantly about Cancelo to Arsenal because I've opened Twitter, I see a hell of a lot of people talking about it. Not too sure where the rumours, and I'll call them rumours, originate from. But it is a player that looks like won't be kept on by Bayern Munich, fell out with Pep at Man City. First and foremost, what's your initial thoughts about potentially going in for Cancelo this summer?
From a football perspective, Cancelo's an amazing player. When he was in the Premier League, he's one of the best right backs in the Premier League. He's won titles with Manchester City, and this is exactly the profile of actual football player that we should be looking at if we want to take this team one step further. We went from Lacazette to Jesus, and we've gone from Tierney to Zinchenko, and we're bringing in that Premier League winning experience, and that's what we want to do. And from a football playing perspective, this would be the same. If I'm going to look at any potential negatives, obviously falling out with a couple of different managers in a short period of time. We know that Arteta's a bit of a disciplinarian. He obviously knows him well and personally and thinks he can get the best out of him.
How well does he know him? What was the crossover like?
There must have been a season or 2 of crossover. Yeah. I don't think he knows him quite as well as the others.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's obviously backing himself to go and bring in that type of profile. And I did wonder how much Arteta is going to continue with the style of football that he's been playing thus far with the inverted fullbacks. And is he going to have, we're looking at Zinchenko and Tierney. Are we going to keep both and have 2 different types of fullback, or are we going to go all in on this total football style of play? And that's, I think, looking at someone like Cancelo coming to Arsenal looks like we're probably going to go all in on that total football style of play.
But the way I look at it is it's something I've mentioned recently as well. I want to keep Tierney so much at this club next season, and bringing in a right back that can also invert and also come into the midfield and help our attacking transition and flow and overload in the middle. Maybe we get one on the right, which will allow us next season to some games start Zinchenko on the left and either Ben White or Tomiyasu on the right, more of an out-and-out fullback. But it can also give us the option to start Cancelo on the right and Tierney on the left, who will tuck into the free.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. That's what I'm really hoping is going to happen. We know that our season started to fall off a little bit with the injury of William Saliba, but I think something that's going under the radar is also the person that would be his natural replacement, if not Holding, would probably be Tomiyasu. And Tomiyasu's also him or Ben White, right? Because they both play both positions. Tomiyasu's also been injured, and that's kind of going under the radar because we focus on Saliba so much. With Cancelo coming in and being able to play that inverted right back and Zinchenko playing the inverted left back, yes, we do have Tierney that can be more of a get forward and whip crosses in the box type of traditional fullback, but also we have Ben White and Tomiyasu who can drop in and cover the centre back. So it gives us a little bit more centre back cover, even though we're actually bringing in a right back.
Yeah, again, that's something I've been thinking. It's not necessarily we go out and get a right-sided centre back to back up Saliba, but potentially we get a right back that allows one of Tomiyasu and Ben White to back. Because Ben White in his first season, him and Gabriel, I think they had a good first season together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I've heard from a bunch of Arsenal players as well that in training, Tomiyasu is the #1 winner of things in the air.
Yeah.
He's very big, very strong, very physical, can play right back, but as a centre back, he's very accomplished as well. So all of that just gives us so many options. And we know with Arteta, he looks at these individual departments and thinks, I want options.
Yeah. I was going to bring this question up, and it's already been brought up by a few in the live chat. Attitude problems? Do you see that with Cancelo?
I think he's a professional when he's on the pitch, and so people don't seem to see the attitude problems. He's not like an Aubameyang or a Sterling that might sulk on the pitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably one of my bigger concerns, especially with a team that I don't want to say the mentality is fragile, but the whole situation is very delicate. I'll say delicate, and we don't want any disruptions coming into this team.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I think he has to, but at the same time, I think Arteta needs players that are going to push him to get minutes. One of the big criticisms I think we've both had is lack of rotation from him.
Yeah.
And if he brings in a player like this, who has been at the top level and won things, he will really, really push to get into the team and push for that rotation. And I kind of think that Arteta needs a bit of that. We have to remember he's not a fully accomplished manager. He does have to show a little bit of flexibility, and he needs players that are going to push him as much as he's going to push those players. So I don't know. It could go one of two ways.
Do you think that lack of rotation, lack of flexibility comes through choice or comes through resources and not having the required personnel to be confident about making changes throughout the season?
I think it's a little bit of both. There have been times when he's rotated the squad and it hasn't worked out for him and he's paid the price for that and dropped points. And there's been times when he's rotated and it has worked out. You know, we look at the most recent game, bringing in Jorginho. He's forced into that with maybe a slight injury and poor performances from Thomas Partey. Jorginho does very well. We know the Reece Nelson 3-2, the goal. Trossard has looked fantastic whenever he's come off the bench, but still doesn't really get a start unless someone is really, really failing.
Yeah.
And then he has his kind of favourites, his undroppables. You know, Saka very, very rarely gets rotated, even when he looks like maybe he could use a rest. So I do think it's a little bit of both. And as we fill out the squad and increase the overall quality of the squad, we'll be able to get more of a feel of, you know, how flexible is this manager.
Yeah, and looking at Cancelo's profile, he's 28, he turns 29 later this month, I believe, off the top of my head. We're going to talk about recruitment strategy later on in the show, but is that sort of the profile you'd want to be going for? We're obviously, or we have been linked to Fresneda as well in January, and in the last recent weeks, his name has popped up again, a very young prospect. But is experience something that you're looking for this season? I mean, this summer transfer now.
I think so. When it comes to vital moments, you know, both last season and this season, in really vital, decisive moments, we just haven't had the experience of the squad. When players are coming off the bench, it's not necessarily that they are not as good, but some of the players maybe are lacking a little bit of experience. Reece Nelson, I think, is a very talented player, but just doesn't have the experience that maybe he should do. Same as Rob Holding, we got him from Bolton. These are not people that have been at the Arsenal's top level football, but in terms of winning trophies and different things like that. So bringing someone like Cancelo in, you know, it can't do any harm to the experience. I think sometimes I criticize Arteta, and I'm a big Arteta fan, by the way. I don't want anyone to get that misconstrued, but sometimes he thinks a little bit too much about the project and not enough about the here and now. And we'll talk about Saka's contract and contract situations. If we can lock down some of our key young players, we can start to incorporate more experience back into the team.
Lou says, I like this guy, very articulated. Big up, come on. And Happy
Love
Human
that.
says, Trossard had quote unquote attitude problems at Brighton, but he's been a great signing. Do you think, you know, some people are paying too much attention to the fallout with Pep not starting for Bayern? Could that just be circumstances at that club, or could that be more a reflection of Cancelo and what he's about?
You know, it could be a personal situation that's happening with him in his personal life, because these two fallouts, Cancelo's never had fallouts before, and he's had two fallouts in a really short period of time. So it could be a coincidence, but it could be something personal for him that's happening in his personal life. We don't know. But yeah, he's always been a professional. We've not heard this throughout his career, but we're just starting to hear these things now. And, you know, I don't know all of the details, of course, but he is a top right back who deserves to be playing games. So we don't, it's not that he's gone off a cliff and, you know, he's been playing really poorly. He's still one of the top right backs, in the top 5 leagues, he definitely deserves minutes. So, I wouldn't hold too much stock in that. And I know Arteta will bring in players that he feels have the right mentality. He's spoken about this from the very beginning when he came to Arsenal, looking at the profile of person as well as the profile of player.
Do you worry about him defensively? I mean, Zinchenko this season, he gets a lot more plaudits for how he aids the transition and the attack and the overload in the midfield than he does defensively. If we look at Liverpool with Trent, similar there. He adds so much in terms of how Liverpool move forward, but defensively lapses in concentration. Maybe positionally, there's been worries. Do you have those same concerns with Cancelo, or do you see him being better defensively than, for example, those two?
If we build a strong spine of the team, strong top quality DM, we'll talk about that shortly, strong goalkeeper, strong centre backs and different things like that, I'm not too worried about it. We've seen Man City win plenty of leagues with fullbacks whose main strength is attacking. The one season they didn't win it was when Liverpool won it. They have very attacking fullbacks. Yep. So if we're following the blueprint of teams that are very successful, and we can even maybe make arguments for Alphonso Davies being more exciting or better going forwards than he is defensively. By Real Madrid, the same. So lots of those top European elite clubs, they go to outscore teams. Yes, it would be great to be defensively sound. In Saliba, Gabriel, potentially Ben White, Tomiyasu, that's 3 or 4 really, really good centre-backs. And Aaron Ramsdale's a fantastic keeper. We have to go out and outscore teams. That has to be the way that we play football. Does
he come in and start straight away for you? Or considering, this season, if I was to do a team of the season, I'll be putting Ben White in the right-back position for Premier League team of the season. He's done so well in that position, and he's become actually one of my favourite players because he just comes in, does his job and goes home. There isn't much else with Ben White. He doesn't really like football too much. I don't really care about that. If you're doing your job on the pitch, that's what I care about.
Agreed.
But in terms of attacking quality, we know that Cancelo's on another level, but does he displace Ben White, or is it a case of multiple competitions, the need of changing it up potentially in Europe or potentially in some games in the Premier League? How do you see his entry point if we were to sign him?
I think that he has to come in and maybe be patient is the wrong way to describe it, because obviously that's the issue he's had at his previous 2 clubs. But I think it's a question of who are we playing? Are we playing when we're going to dominate the ball? Are we playing when we need to counter attack when we're not going to dominate the ball? It's really important. Zinchenko and Tierney, they make a great left side department, and I could see João Cancelo and Ben White making a great right side department together. Much the way that you look at Jesus and Nketiah, there's a bigger gap in quality between those players than there is between our fullbacks, but they work in tandem very much as our striking department together. And I think for us to go and win leagues, you look at Alvarez has just won the World Cup and he comes back and he's second choice striker, but Haaland's in front of him. That's the mentality that you need to have. You really need to share that. There's not many people in world football today, apart from maybe a Benzema and Mbappe, that just have a position and hold that down. Lots of these top players, share those positions.
And do you think Arsenal are at that point now? Because I ask that because I look at Man City and I look at some of the depth they have and the quality they have on the bench, and it's few and far between you hear players, upset or players causing problems. I look at that and I think that's the Pep factor. Playing for Pep, challenging on all fronts. Even quality players won't mind giving up some minutes to be part of the greater cause. Similar to, let's say, Real Madrid and Benzema. That's Real Madrid. The heritage there and being part of the squad means so much because they're always challenging for stuff. At Arsenal, this is a very young squad. We've only just turned it around in terms of bringing Arsenal's name back up and raising the bar for us fans, but also opposition fans looking in, fans from European clubs looking in and looking at Arsenal as a real threat. Do you think it'd be difficult for a young manager and a young team like Arsenal to have quality players sitting on the bench at times?
I don't think so. I think that the factor of winning trophies and being competitive on all fronts trumps the Pep factor. If Pep was finishing 5th, that would wane pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and with João Cancelo, Tomiyasu potentially covering for Saliba, Kivior covering for Gabriel, Tierney and Zinchenko, and then Matt Turner. That's 2 quality back fives that we have, and there's really no excuse to not be challenging on all fronts with those types of players. You've got different types of profiles: players that can attack, players that can defend, inverted, holding their position, whatever you want to do. And that's when we're looking at Man City, that's exactly what they've got across the team. And so we can talk about other departments, but in that back 5 department, 100%, that's pretty much what we want to be seeing.
All right, people, we put a poll in the chat. There's over 900 votes, but there's over 1.3k in the building watching live. So hit the like button and place your vote if you haven't already. And we're going to look at the results real soon. But we've got a super chat here from Ricky on Cancelo. He says, fell out with Pep, not starting at Bayern. He will come with entitlement issues. Dumfries from Inter, better. Turkish, Saliba could invert like stone. So let's break this super chat up a little bit. And we've mentioned his falling out with Pep. We've mentioned not starting at Bayern and potential attitude problems. You call it entitlement issues, Ricky. I disagree on Dumfries from Inter being the better option, if I'm honest, because I think Cancelo is in my opinion, a different level quality-wise to Dumfries. But does he have a point here? Would you potentially move away considering the risk factor involved, or do you think 28 turning 29, having been part of league-winning sides, being one of the best fullbacks, if not the best fullback last season, would you take that risk?
Anytime you sign any player, there's a risk, right? And you have to know what the player's strengths and weaknesses are. With Arteta, he could bring in this player, and this is, what Ricky's saying is not entirely incorrect. He makes a really good point. But in Arteta, he's bringing in a player that he has some level of relationship with, that Zinchenko has a relationship with, Jesus has a relationship with. With regards, and also the thing that he has over Dumfries is that he is Premier League proven. Yeah. He's played at this ground. He's not going to, we've seen us struggle when we've gone to Anfield. We've seen us struggle when we've gone to the Etihad. Those are the grounds, actually, if we can get a win at Anfield and get a win at the Etihad, we probably win the league this year. And it may be very, very similar next year. So the key thing is that we bring in players that can go and play at these away grounds. Same as maybe Old Trafford. We lost at Old Trafford, but we beat them at our ground. Those kind of top six grounds are where we really struggle. And bringing someone in that is Premier League proven, has gone and won games there, scored big goals at those grounds, that experience is invaluable. And you can bring in a player and say, okay, here's what we're going to watch out for. We know this is the weakness of this player. We know what we have to worry about. Maybe there's an argument that actually it's better bringing in a player that what the concerns are, so you can keep an eye on those concerns, rather than a player that's a complete anomaly that you have no relationship with.
The next question I'm going to ask comes from me looking at when he actually arrived at City. He arrived at City in 2019, so give or take about 4 to 5 months having worked with Arteta. Do you think these rumours are fueled by that connection, or do you think there's actually truth to these rumours?
I think a mixture of both. For all the reasons that we've already outlined, him coming to Arsenal makes a lot of sense. We know that Arsenal don't like to spend huge money if they can afford not to, and we've already done something similar with Trossard, which in my opinion has worked out very, very well for us in January, where we've swooped in on a bad relationship. And this is the kind of recruitment that we have struggled to do in the last decade. Yeah. When the player's there, they're available, the price could be good, we can really we could really manipulate a situation, and we're just not cold-blooded enough to do it. And this is exactly the kind of coup that we have to be a top club, because people have no issue doing it to us when our players are falling out. So, like I say, a decent crossover of time with Arteta, and then, I think this is exactly what we need.
So it sounds like, in your opinion, there's a lot more pros than cons to potentially signing him.
For sure. I mean, so you can get attitude issues with any player. True. Aubameyang had attitude issues. We saw in the documentary Lacazette fouling a youth team player. Yep. It's just one of those things. Then we have players that are really disciplined, like a David Luiz, like a Rob Holding, like a Cedric, but they are not our best players. They were not actually delivering the super, and we, appreciate what you did, professionalism, but there's got to be a balance of what you do on the pitch as well.
Yeah. And I guess that does come, with
a bit of an ego.
With a bit of an ego, and ego can come from a teenager, an early 20-year-old, or it can come from an experienced player like Cancelo. Right. The latter bit of this super chat from Ricky said Saliba could invert like stones, and I know it's taking it away from the Cancelo subject a little bit, but do you see something like that? I mean, Pep's done it well this season. Stones is probably having his best season in the Manchester City shirt, probably his best season in his career.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Saliba stepping out. He's the step out player of our back four, of the two centre backs, to start to kind of dictate play. He hits unbelievable long balls. We saw the goal that he scored against Bournemouth. So definitely he's just such a versatile player. I think the key thing for us is to try and tie him down to a contract. That's really got to be there. But yeah, I absolutely agree with Ricky there that he could be a Stones-esque type player. Yeah.
We're going to end the poll now, because we're going to move it on from Cancelo. We're just coming up to 20 minutes in. The poll has over 1.2 thousand votes. and it's heavily in the yes. 80% of those 1.2k votes are saying yes, they would take Cancelo at Arsenal. So they pretty much agree. But like I said at the beginning, not sure where these rumours originate from. Not sure how true they are. So don't get your hopes up. You know what happens come transfer window time, especially with Arsenal. Players are linked left, right and centre. And because of that little connection that Arteta has with him, I guess it was an easy one for media or Twitter in the know journalists, whatever they call themselves, to put together.
Yeah.
Another super chat coming off subject again, but I'm going to get it in now. Ohan says, I see the title going down to the last day and City clinching it by a point, only for Arsenal fans to be blaming the referee at the Arsenal-Brentford game.
Yeah, I agree. If you go and look at my my AFTV fan cam that I did with James, I said he asked me not just how I thought we'd end, but down to points. And I said I think we end on 90 and City end on 91. So I said I think it ends by 1 point.
When did you say that? A few weeks ago?
It's after the Newcastle game.
Just on the weekend.
Just on the weekend, yeah. So I agree, and you know, people always say about us Arsenal fans, oh, you're complaining about the referee and stuff like that, but it's not us complaining about the referee. If we didn't say anything, it's a statement of fact that the Referees Association came out and apologized, saying that they made a mistake. That is a statement of fact. Even if we don't, we might say it, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does come down to those fine margins, but it also comes down to what we've just spoken about, having the right recruitment and having someone to cover Tomiyasu when he gets injured. We don't play Saliba in that Sporting game. Maybe he doesn't get injured. We don't go on that free draw run.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't drop 6 points in 3 games and suddenly, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff. It is definitely that Brentford game is a part of it, but there's many other factors as well. And those are the things we have to correct going into next season.
Yeah, listen, you took the words out of my mouth. People could look at that, you know, VAR mess up against Brentford. They can look at the mess up, was it VAR, the referee against United at Old Trafford when Martinelli's first goal was ruled out. Or we can look at the Saliba injury. We can look at being 2-0 up at Anfield, 2-0 up at the London Stadium and throwing it away. There's so much that we can look at if we don't get over the line that it's gonna hurt. You know, and when people are hurt, they want to find excuses, they want to find reasons, they want to find an outlet to, you know, blame. And I just think that one thing that I don't want the fan base to do is turn on any of the players or turn on the manager, because I think when you look at how far we've come in 3 years, if it's a question of success or failure this season, then, and you're just giving me those two options, in my opinion, of course, it'd be failure, because we were so close to winning the league, we were leading the way for so long. But that's not to say progress hasn't been made. It's only if you're giving me those two options, success or failure. I can't call a season where you don't win anything success, even if you finish second and go to the wire. I can't call that success, because that's part of the bar being raised. And I don't think Arteta would call it success either.
Definitely
but
not.
There can be progress in failure.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, you have to remember 2 seasons ago, we finished 8th.
Yeah.
You know, and then 2 years later, you're finishing second. With, you know, obviously we'll see the points, but if we did finish based on my prediction, we'd be finishing second based on 1 point, and that's a super strong platform to build on.
It's more a Liverpool second than it is a Man United second.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's how I see it. Cool. Let's keep it moving, because we have got a couple more subject matters to talk about. Hit the like button, people. Only 200 likes and there's 1.2k here. We're going to move on to the contract stuff. Reason being because it's come out that Ramsdale's new contract is imminent. I think Fabrizio Romano was the first to release that news, if not someone on Twitter did. And also added to that Saka. But we'll talk about Ramsdale first. I believe it was a 4-year deal given to him in 2021, so he's halfway through that 4-year deal. Contracts have been an issue for Arsenal in the past in terms of allowing players to run it down to a point where the player has a lot more of the power. Do you think this is another example, because Martinelli's earlier this season would be an example too, of Arsenal learning from their mistakes and securing players that mean a lot to us?
You'd like to think so. I mean, you know, it looks like Reece Nelson is also going to reject the contract offer that was put to him. And if he does, then, you know, I wish him the best of luck. I think regular football definitely suits him. And he's definitely that level, and I think he deserves it. But on Aaron Ramsdale, yeah, I think that this is a huge step in the right direction. I did say before that for the long-term success, we all want to get back to competing in the Champions League, winning Premier Leagues, and winning things that are not just the FA Cup. But that's now. But for the long-term success, the next decade of success, we need to either tie players down to decent length contracts or sell them at their maximum value. You know, the top 3, I think, sales we still have are Iwobi, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Mark Overmars.
Yeah.
Back in the day, so we really don't sell these players. So if we do start to get a position, and then once we make a decision, we stick to it. We like Aaron Ramsdale, we want him. Let's tie him down to a contract. If there's contract issues, he's not sure, etc., sell for maximum value and try to put that money back into a replacement and bank the rest. And those are the two things that we've been awful at for well over a decade, and we have to operate this way to secure long-term success, because what we don't want to do is, do a bit of a Chelsea who have won more trophies than us in recent years, but trophy here and there, long drought all the way down, and then build up again, one trophy here and there. We want to be consistently competitive.
In a well-oiled machine.
100%.
Yeah, I get it. And let's talk about the player a bit more now. Ramsdale, I'll talk about my opinion when he initially first came in. I was confused, Martinez, that situation just a year earlier. Leno, in my opinion, is a good keeper, but in terms of modern day football and playing at the back, he isn't the best of options, but he's having a great time at Fulham, and I know the Fulham fans are very happy with him. To be honest, we should have got a better fee than we did for him, but I think the clear out was, in general, at Arsenal was necessary, and I'm glad we kind of did it in the time we did it in, because it could have took a lot longer if we hadn't maybe cut our losses on some players. I'm not saying we cut our losses on Leno, because he was actually one during a bad period that I looked at and thought, he's a good player. He's actually, someone that we can rely upon. But Ramsdale came in having been relegated 2 years in a row. But not only that, some fans would look at the relegation and use that to batter him. But some fans would look at him being player of the season in those 2 years and use that as a way to defend him. In the 2 years he's had at Arsenal, I mean, it's opened my eyes to the quality he has. He's only 24. When you look at the top keepers in the league, Ederson, Alisson, I'm sure 30 or close to 30 years of age. Ramsdale's still got a lot of learning to do. The All or Nothing documentary showed how much even a clean sheet means to him. There was a game we had won, but he didn't get the clean sheet and he was so upset about it. And I think that's part of raising the bar. That's part of being a polished product. And I think to go up against Man City, to beat Man City, to wrestle trophies off Manchester City, you've got to have that bit of OCD about you, I guess. You know, even in winning the game, you're looking at the negatives more so than you're dwelling on the positives.
Yeah, for sure. And Leno was a great servant for the club, and at the time fans were saying, like you said, Aaron Ramsdale's had a relegation, and now you look at Leno playing for Fulham. Who knows, if Leno gets relegated with Fulham at some point, these things can happen. I think Ramsdale's fantastic. There's a lot of attacks levied at him. I don't know if that's because he's English or, whatever the case may be. And I think also a lot of eyebrows were raised because of the fee. The fee seemed high for a goalkeeper of 2 relegations, or any player of 2 relegations, it seemed high. But we see how much playing out from the back and playing a sort of total football structure means to Arteta. And what we saw at Newcastle this weekend just gone was, for me, one of the best examples of Arsenal since the Arteta era, knowing when to play out from the back and when to go long. Yep. Just getting that right. And so that, again, tells us that, like you said, Aaron Ramsdale, despite being fantastic this season, is still not actually the finished product. He probably won't hit his prime until 2-3 years, ideally in the same stride as Saka hitting his prime, Martinelli hitting his prime, and these types of players, they're not even at their optimal yet. Some of these players are still growing physically and growing in experience. So I think it's a fantastic signing.
Any doubts about him? Because again, some people have doubts.
Yeah, I think
Southampton.
There are weaknesses in his game, like everybody. No goalkeeper is perfect. The goalkeeper is one of those positions that, especially with social media, you make a blunder and it goes viral. We've seen Alisson make gaffes. We've seen Van Dijk make gaffes. We've seen Ederson make gaffes. Alisson, for me, has probably been the best goalkeeper this season in the league, him or Jose Sarr. And both of them have made absolute howlers, because it's one of those positions, if you make a mistake, you're immediately punished. I've played I've played football at left back and I've played football at centre mid, and when I played at left back, every single mistake I made, my head was in my hands, because it was a goal scoring opportunity for everyone else. So it's one of those things. I think he needs to work on the physical side of his game. He's quite slim, he's quite flexible, but coming from corners, especially when he gets into physical contact, big, strong goalkeepers bundle people out of the way. He doesn't quite do that. He kind of gets bundled. He bounces off people. That will come with a lot of gym work and different things like that. But, you can't fault him. He's part of this rebuild that we've been on. And I don't, there's 1 or 2 goalkeepers that you might have an argument are ahead of him, and they are the goalkeepers that are higher up the table and winning big things. So
yeah, the goalkeepers that are out of our radar
exactly
in that aspect. And when you talk about what he's brought, I mean, I always refer back to 4 or 5 years ago, Emery coming in with that same mindset of playing out the back, and check, one of the greatest goalkeepers, if not the greatest goalkeeper in Premier League history, struggling so much with it. That shows how much modern football has changed, you know, where we've come to in playing at the back and the importance of a keeper. Someone asked me the other day, is keeper the most important position on the pitch now? It's hard for me to agree with that. But at the same time, when we're talking about most important positions on the pitch, I think goalkeeper is one of a few.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, a centre-back, if you've got a great centre-back partnership, the ball doesn't see your goalkeeper in the first place. But in decisive moments, for sure, you know, Newcastle created a couple of great chances and one or two hit the post, but when they did have a shot on target, he was there, you know, and he was there in that decisive moment, good amount of concentration, not lacking in concentration in quiet moments. And it's, like you say, it's one of the most important, and it's becoming more and more important for the attacking phase of the game. You know, we're seeing goalkeepers get assists more and more. Back in when we were growing up, that might happen once or twice a season. Now, I think there's a season where Alisson had 2 or 3 assists in one season. That's more than some attackers. You know, so yeah, you know, it's such an important position, and it's about, like you say, bringing that mentality. We know from the documentary how important having the right mentality is for the back room, for the actual dressing room, and for the training and all that kind of stuff. Raising the bar and having super high standards, really, really important.
100%. Abdullah says, like in the way we're handling contract situations, keep the performers, sell the young potentials that need minutes, and sign more performers. Thank you, Abdullah, for the super chat. I see a few more super chats in, and I'm going to get to them when we kind of get to that subject. Even though Ricky's one is referencing our earlier chat, saying Devil's Advocate City lost points at Old Trafford with a VAR screw-up. Yeah.
And that's why we didn't just put it, potentially not win the league, just down to VAR. We said there are other things as well.
100%. And Saka, it seemed that new contract imminent. It's not the first time I've heard this season. Since January, it seems to be, you know, a reoccurring theme. I'm confident he has signed, or he is going to sign. Firstly, let's talk about him signing and the importance of that before I talk about why it's taken this long potentially to get it done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's already done. I think they're waiting to announce so that they don't distract away from what's happening on the football pitch personally. But I think it's, you know, Saka is the academy boy. He's the face of Arsenal at the moment. You know, he's a potential captain. There'll be times in the next, hopefully, if everything goes well, there'll be times in the next 10, 15 years where he's telling younger players what it means to play at the Bernabeu or what it means to play at the Allianz Arena or wherever. And we love seeing academy players make it to the first team and go and be successful. It's very, very rare that happens, especially in the Premier League, especially at a top 6 club. And we're happy to see that for obviously this is Arsenal, but we're happy to see that broadly for any club or any player to really stick with an academy and go all the way. And that's what it is. You know, he also, I think there's some romance to the story. He has come through under the dark ages of Emery, who was, you know, not as bad as people might make out, but it was a really tough time. He's so versatile. He started off playing wing back. He then moved forwards to left wing, and then he's found his natural position.
Even
at
number 10
wing.
at times.
Number 10 sometimes, you know. So he's a real total football player that can play multiple positions. He embodies everything that is Arsenal. We feel he's a London boy as well, like we said. Making it all the way into the England setup. You know, he's scored crucial goals for England as well. He looks like
their best player at the World Cup.
One of their best players at the World Cup for sure. You know, possibly first name on the team sheet, or one of for Gareth Southgate. So going all the way to the top, not just a Reece Nelson and Eddie Nketiah getting some minutes for Arsenal, but really going to the top level of pinnacle of football. And we want to build this team around him. And, you know, it's just onwards and upwards every time you see him play.
On that onwards and upwards, he's got 13 goals, 11 assists this season. Since his introduction during Emery's era, he's kicked on. Any obstacle in his way, he's got around it, he's got over it. What do you think his ceiling is in terms of when we're talking about forwards, we're talking about productivity? He's got 13 goals, 11 assists this season. Is it about consistency with those numbers, or do you see him potentially getting closer to the 20 goal mark and producing more? He's only 21.
Yeah, I think definitely maybe a few more goals. Getting close to the 20 goal mark I think is really important, but he's the player everyone doubles up on, despite the fact that Martinelli maybe brings more flair and more skills and different things like that. everybody doubles up on Bukayo Saka, every team, because they recognize in the world of football from fellow professionals that if you don't, he's going to give you a nightmare. And he is just so versatile. I keep using that word because he can get down the line, byline, and cut the ball across. He can cut in and strike. He can do a lot of different stuff. The only thing maybe where he doesn't catch the eye as much as some other people is maybe he doesn't quite have that flary side, but he almost doesn't need it. He's a real football player, if that makes sense, rather than just like step overs and skills and stuff like that. His ceiling, I think he can go all the way to the top. I really do. You know, because he wears an Arsenal shirt, people might not see it yet, but when people are seeing it, and when we have the conversation about world class, I don't want to get into that now, but people are saying we haven't seen him in top tournaments. We see him play at the World Cup now. There's no bigger stage than that. I have super confidence that he'll be fantastic in the Champions League and put in good performances. You know, he really has a ceiling to go and be one of the very, very best.
He has to look at a Vinicius and say, that's what I need to be doing. Because
100%.
As much as you're right, World Cup is the top footballing tournament, the top prize in football. Champions League, it's been so long, and we're going into it with Saka, one of, if not our key player next season. His numbers have been great this season. Are you saying his ceiling is higher than Martinelli for you then?
I think that he's more versatile as a player than Martinelli. I think that Martinelli is more reliant on his... But the reason being versatile, the reason I keep talking about it, if I explain that, is because I think Martinelli is somebody that if he were to have an injury and his pace were to go, that would slow him down as a player.
Okay.
If Saka had the same thing, I don't think it would affect him quite as much because he's not so reliant just on his pace, just on his skill. He can do so many different things. Even if he was a player that adjusted his position, you know, he could play almost anywhere on the pitch at this moment in time. So for me, yeah, I think that as an overall player, you know, like I say, Martinelli might have the higher ceiling as in terms of numbers, but I think Saka might have the higher ceiling as terms of an overall player.
Different players,
yeah,
and what they bring from the wide positions. And I just want to kind of move it on to why it's potentially taken this long to come out. Reason being because on Twitter I see some of the replies, and I've been guilty of this as well in the past, and I look at some of the things that come out of Arsenal, some of the statements, some of the decisions, some of the stories and headlines, and I always wonder, is this PR? Now, it seems like Saka's contract was pretty much wrapped up a little while ago. Do you think it's been delayed in terms of an announcement because potentially losing out on a league title, the pain and frustration of it can be balanced off with our star boy has a new contract? Or do you think that's just me being too pessimistic about Arsenal? And
I don't think... I think you're being pessimistic about it right now. I think this was done back in January. I think this was done ages ago.
Yeah.
And that was done, I think it was done at a time when we were top. But I think that in anticipation of the worst coming to the worst and us not winning the title,
put it in our back pocket.
Put it in our back pocket, and actually we can pull this out later. And I also think from a less cynical perspective, it's a case of not distracting the team.
Yeah.
You know, Aubameyang's contract situation became a bit of a distraction. You know, everybody was focused on that, and we lost sight of what we were really trying to do.
Yeah.
Especially with multiple players signing new contracts. You know, we can maybe even have announcements of multiple players signing and put that and maybe package that with new signings and all this different stuff. So they'll want to be very strategic and political about how they announce it. But I think at the end of the season, it makes sense, especially given that it looks like we could lose out on the title. You know, I don't think they're quite as pessimistic as you, but I think that
you know why I have been though.
But I understand. I totally understand it for sure.
And to be honest, they announced the Martinelli one earlier, so I guess that the jubilance of that one has led us to this point now. Couple super chats. Abdullah says we need a left back, a right back, who will feel like a centre back as well, since White can cover, a class number 6 and a class 25 goal plus striker, since Jesus and Trossard can cover Saka. Abdullah, we're going to get on to ins and outs and transfer strategy shortly moving forward into the show. And Dave Jordan says, quote unquote, football all about trophies. It's the biggest myth going. Football's about enjoying watching your team every week. Live in the moment, not for one game in May. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, what's your thoughts about that? Is football's all about trophies a myth? You know what? I'd actually say it's not all about trophies, but I think when you support a club like Arsenal, trophies and high standards and raising the bar is a must.
True, I agree with you. But the statement there, is it Dave?
Yeah.
The statement Dave gave is football is all about trophies being a myth. And that is absolutely true. The vast majority of football fans across the world do not watch their teams win trophies.
Yeah.
They just don't. It's got even worse during the social media era because you'll get bantered and everyone will clip you and all the rest of it, and you bottle that, or whatever the case may be. And people kind of hold you more accountable to your words now. You have a decision, you say something about a player, you can't change your mind later, you're fixed.
Flip flop.
Exactly. So, but I think Dave is absolutely right. You know, there is so many things. You know, we laugh at Tottenham. They went to the Champions League final. That was a big day out for them. We still remember our Champions League final from 2006. We remember these days. Your kids will remember these days. Obviously, you want to come away with the win, but you take your kids 3, 4, 5 years old to big games. You might remember your first game. I remember my first game at the Emirates. I got there late, Everton. So they're core memories. Now, obviously, winning trophies and being competitive is a really important part of sport. And winning trophies is not necessarily what makes days big, but keeps you in the top league. And, you know, you don't want to get relegated or something like that. Yeah. But there are plenty of people out there, the vast majority of people out there, who have been fans of football for years and years and years, and there are fans of clubs that are not Arsenal that enjoyed watching Arsenal under Wenger.
Oh, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? But they're not Arsenal fans. But they're football fans. Yeah. And they've got their club and they go, well, wow, you got, just like we might look at a prime Barcelona and go, wow, what a joy that was to watch that. That was special. But so that's that. I know what Dave's saying. That's what football's about. And then for us, like you say, when you support a Big Six club, one of the biggest clubs in world football, trophies is also a part of it. But outside of the top 6, outside of the top 10, 15 clubs in the world, football's about joy, it's about competition. Yeah. You know, 100%.
And the lows make the highs higher, if that makes sense. You know, especially look at Manchester City. I mean, I talk to Big Steve a hell of a lot, a Manchester City fan. He's on social media too. He used to be a part of the Big Six, and he always talked about Man City in League One and going to Lincoln and Yeovil, and now he's just coming back from Madrid today. He's coming up to his sixth Premier League, potentially his 6th Premier League title. Yeah. So those lows must be making these highs higher. Like Arsenal, for example, 8th, dropping into Europa League, making top 4, but not really building upon it. If we were to get over the line this season, if we were to get a Premier League next season, a Champions League in the next few years, what we've been through potentially makes those moments even more special and even more great.
100%. Sport in general is about storylines and narratives. You know, if you're not a football fan, you won't know what it means to see Saka score a banger against Man United after Rashford scored his banger at the other end. That's really important. Or Thomas Partey smashing the ball top bins against Tottenham specifically in their there's added content, you know, away from just the Arsenal element. They're just goals. Okay, you can, a random person put the TV on and see somebody scoring a goal, but the added context of what that means for us as fans of that particular club, you know, when you know the history of different clubs and all that kind of stuff, you know, that all adds to the romance of it, you know. And like you say, the lows definitely make the highs even better. Yeah,
and hopefully we've got a few highs to come around the corner.
Definitely.
Hopefully one in a few weeks, but if not, young manager, hopefully we build upon it. Let's move it to the last segment of the show. We're coming up to 45 minutes in. Don't forget to hit the like button, people. Don't forget to subscribe to Nick's channel. It's in the title. You just click it, subscribe. It won't take you away from the video. He's just been starting up recently, so show him some love. My channel's there too, Big Six tonight at 10 p.m. So if you're a fan of that, make sure you tune in. If you're not, then what the hell are you doing? And let's get to the last segment. Couple questions here, but we'll roll them into one. I mentioned earlier about Cancelo, 28, turning 29. Is that what Arsenal need to do now? Bring in experience, bring in wingers to help guide this young team through difficult moments or pressure cooker moments. Do we, you know, the couple questions we have here, do we replace players or add players to the squad? And do we continue or upgrade our recruitment strategy? I mean, what do you make of that?
The difficulty with being, you know, we spoke about standards. When you're a top 6 club and you're a big club like Arsenal, you have to be able to fight on multiple fronts. We are going to be in all the trophies next year and on all the competitions, and we're going to want to go far in every single one. Yeah. And it's the same when we're running the club. We need to be able to do both. It needs to be a balancing act. I do think that we have a strong core of young players. Saka, Martinelli, either wing. You know, Jesus up top. I think there's you know, we could potentially find some of these a little bit more prolific, but that spine is Ødegaard in the 10. That's, you know, in talk of Declan Rice in the 6, Saliba and Gabriel. We forget how young Gabriel still is because he's been around for a while, Ramsdale. That spine of an Arsenal team needs some experience in and around it.
Yeah.
You know, there's Xhaka there, there's Jorginho there. Maybe we bring in a more experienced striker. We've seen what Trossard has done when he comes in, super professional. And actually, going back to the point you made earlier, he's a player that, again, you spoke about attitude issues. He wasn't getting a lot of minutes, and he's still not getting a lot of minutes right now, but he still comes on with perfect attitude every single time. And that's experience. That's what it does for you. So I think that now we're at a place of bringing in some experience, but that doesn't mean that if there aren't great young players, we bring them in. And whether we bring them in to start or whether we bring them in and then put them out on loan and see what happens. We see Balogun, who was pushing Nketiah for a place. He's gone out to the French league and is one of the top goal scorers there. So we have to be able to delicately balance a little bit of both, because football is secular. And so we have to be able to keep an eye on the next young, exciting prospect so that we can keep this young kind of train going and bring an experience at the same time in key areas. So it's a little bit of both.
So let's look at some of the players we've been closely linked to. And you mentioned one, Declan Rice. Caicedo is another one. Even Lavia's name has come up, and he's even younger than Caicedo is. So you think it's about doing a bit of the same we've been doing, recruiting young quality people and players that can grow and become a bigger part of the squad in years to come, but also getting the necessary experience in the spine to help guide them?
Correct. Yeah, I think so. I think that if you go to bring in, say, for example, you bring in a Declan Rice, it's really important that you've got an experienced Granit Xhaka next to him.
Okay.
You know, I would be much more concerned, or there's talk of, say, Emil Smith-Rowe being trained in that Xhaka role. I feel much more comfortable with that if maybe Thomas Partey or Jorginho sits in the 6.
Yeah.
You know, the Rice and Smith-Rowe together worries me.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So there needs to be that sort of balance. There needs to be a real balance there, especially when we're going into big games for like the top 6 clashes that we have and Champions League games, Champions League knockout games. There's got to be some experience, and then maybe there's a shout for both experienced players, or maybe in key moments you play the 2 young players together. You know, we remember the first time Saka assisted Martinelli and they started to get that link up together, you know, and that we can build that over a period of time. But we don't want to bring young players in and expect them to gel straight away. We need to, you know, there's talk of, do we sell Granit Xhaka? I wouldn't sell Granit Xhaka. I would have Granit Xhaka in the squad, and whether he is not phased out slowly, but whether he plays less minutes, but still plays a key role, that might be something to look at, rather than selling Granit Xhaka and bringing in a younger 8 when we're also looking at bringing in potentially a younger 6.
Yeah, funnily enough, I agree with you there. I think ideally you keep Xhaka, but you upgrade on him, and because of the multiple competitions, at least then you're a bit more confident with rotating the side in that position, as well as I have been with Trossard coming in for one of the forwards, or Tierney coming in for Zinchenko, or, well, there's not many more alls to that. Even Tomiyasu, even for Ben White, I've been comfortable with those because we've got more depth in those positions.
Yeah.
Do you see Rice more as an 8 than a 6, or more 6 than an 8?
I think lots of West Ham fans I've spoken to say that he can play both. They see him more, and they see that, you know, with Moyes' tactics, he's quite limited to what he can do. And they have a really strong belief that actually under a more progressive manager, he could be a more progressive player. And I agree with that. But when I see him play for West Ham and I see him play for England, and we do have a fairly attacking team for England, despite having 8 right backs on the pitch at any one time, but the England team is very attacking. Rice does perfectly at breaking up play and shifting the ball onto the more creative players.
Yeah.
And then every so often, when you're not expecting it, having a strike from distance, pinging out a long pass, he just has it all in his locker. He's more than capable of doing it. But I still would like somebody next to him who's a little bit more of a mobile number 8, a bit of an Aaron Ramsey-esque 8 that can score goals. You know, that's the problem I have with Xhaka. He's had a great season at 8, not really letting the shots off, not letting the goals go quite as much. And so we need more goals from that midfield. So that's where I would look at someone like a Smith-Rowe to be in there as well. Or, you know, if we could find someone like, say, that's a little bit more Aaron Ramsey-like. But I think the 6th position is so difficult, especially at the top level. I would like him to focus on one thing. You know, I'd like him to come in and be a real specialist in one area. And that's the area that I would put him in.
I'm actually going to ask you the same question I asked Gunali on Tuesday. Reason being because the Xhaka rumours popped up on Tuesday by Leverkusen, Arsenal, allowing Xhaka to make the decision. It sounds like to me, we'll be telling Xhaka that next season you're not going to get as many minutes. We're going to bring in another number 8 and you're going to be part of a rotation. If you're happy with that, we're happy to keep you. If you're not happy with that, then if you have got an option that you are happy with, then thank you for your loyalty.
Yeah.
We'll sell you. So the question I asked Gunali is, with Gundogan's contract coming to an end this summer, let's just say Xhaka wouldn't be happy with rotating and less minutes next season because he's 30 now, or coming up to 30, or just over 30, and he's only got a few more years in him in terms of playing week in, week out. Would you prefer to go into next season with Rice and Xhaka in the 8, or would you prefer to go into next season with Rice and Gundogan in the 8?
I mean, based on the last couple of seasons of performances, you'd be a fool not to say Rice and Gundogan. That being said, there are things, if from a purely football perspective, Rice and Gundogan, if we're playing FIFA.
Yeah.
But Granit Xhaka has been so crucial to the team. We know a lot of the players talk about him being a real leader in the dressing room. I'm sure Gundogan can be a leader also, but this is someone that's been there for a few years and that's doing it. And that's really the difficulty. The dressing room is so difficult and so fragile. But I do also think that there are possibly better options out there than Gundogan, period. Gundogan himself is not particularly young. I think he's over 32 as well. So, if we're talking about Granit Xhaka coming up to 30, it doesn't make sense to switch him out for somebody who's actually a couple of years older, albeit a fantastic player. I think there's players that are maybe 2 or 3 years younger that fit that mould that are, again, going to be there for, in 2 or 3 years when the wingers are hitting their peak, they can also hit their peak with them and we can all be cooking on gas.
I'm going to ask a question. Before I do, I want to lead up to that question by asking you about Mudryk in January, because we haven't talked much one-on-one, Nick. When we were linked to Mudryk, we were linked from the end of November through December and into January. And I remember tweeting, if Arteta wants him, then get him, no matter the cost, because Arteta's shown enough in transfer windows for me to be confident in his recruitment. In the end, it didn't happen. We brought Trossard in, and to be honest, I'm very happy with Trossard, and Chelsea fans ain't too happy with Mudryk. Reason I'm asking that is because Declan Rice is rumoured to be 120 million price tag. Is he worth that? No, in my opinion. But if it's who Arteta wants, how would you feel about spending that much, which will probably be a large chunk of our transfer budget?
I did a video on DR Sports with Laurie arguing about the transfer fee with regards to Mudryk, and I said, there's a point at which transfer fee becomes a hostage situation rather than a negotiation. And Mudryk and Rice are 2 totally different situations. We're talking about roughly the same price, but for one player who is Premier League proven, played at the World Cup for England, knows Smith Rowe and Saka already, and all the rest of it. That is very different for somebody who's outside of the top 5 leagues and not particularly well known. So, it's 2 totally different situations. I don't think that we can compare them. But yeah, I mean, and also I would challenge Arteta being flawless on his recruitment strategy. There are a few gaps in there with Sambi and Tavares and different things like that. Willian as well. So there are some weaknesses in there. But I don't know if you've got some news for us. Yeah,
some breaking news. I've just seen a tweet from David Ornstein, and it's off subject, but I think it's very relevant. Arsenal defenders William Saliba and Zinchenko out for the rest of the season. Saliba has not recovered sufficiently from back injury, and Zinchenko picked up a calf problem at Newcastle. Better news is neither expected to require surgery. Saliba was kind of expected at this moment, but Zinchenko one's come out of nowhere. I thought the substitution was more tactical than it was fear of injury.
Yeah, and with some of these journalists as well, obviously you have to then maybe don't know as much as they think that they know, or maybe sometimes they have a certain relationship with the club, so maybe there could be a strategic reason behind these tweets. But if that is the case, this is an opportunity for Kieran Tierney to kind of show why he should be in this team next year. I think that, there is the slight concern I have with Arteta is, like I said, going all in on this total football and doing away with any other strategy. And then when he sees it's not working, or he's figured out by a rival manager, there's no one on the bench to change things. I really want Zinchenko in the team next year, but I also really want Tierney in the team next year. And so that's a little bit of a concern. So Tierney's got an opportunity here, especially if Eddie Howe wants him at Newcastle, because that will cause all sorts of problems. I think I read that Trippier's created more chances or had more crosses than anyone else in the top 5 leagues.
Not surprising.
So with Tierney on the other side, there would just be a nightmare with target men. So we definitely can't sell him to Newcastle. But this is an opportunity now for the next 3 games to show why he should be in the team. I think he deserves this run.
Do you think he'll see it as an opportunity that he needs to take, or do you think he'll see it as, you just call me when Zinchenko's injured, kind of thing?
I think I don't know if maybe not an opportunity, but I don't think he'll look down on it as like the way that you maybe described. He's a consummate professional and always has been from the moment he arrived. You know, we spoke about not really going out in the city. London's very new to him. He's not from a big, busy city like London. You know, he just knuckles down and does his work, and that's exactly how he is. He has immaculate attitude for any young player to look at. So he will give 100%. I have no doubts about that.
I think about Newcastle is so much closer to Scotland and his home. If they were to come in, what price tag would you be looking at?
I mean, there'd be a bit of a boost because it's a top 6 rival at this particular moment in top 6 in terms of the table, money, and they've got a lot of money. So you know, I would be slapping down. I would be asking for 50-60 million. With the expectation, before people go crazy in the comments, not with the expectation that we would get that. But where I would benchmark him, and then let an offer come in that's the 35 or the 40 or something like that.
I'd say 40 rising to 50 or based on appearances and so on.
Because how much did we get him for?
25.
So to have the performances he's put in for us and the service he's put in for us, and then turn a profit on that would be very un-Arsenal like. But that'd be amazing.
And back to that news, how do you think this news impacts us? Like I said, with Saliba, we've kind of known for time that it looks like it's the rest of the season, even though Arteta had hopes that we'd see him again. Zinchenko now being out, a lot of fans are confident of winning the next 3 games, reaching that 90-point tally, and you know, pushing Manchester City all the way, and maybe even pipping them if they do slip up. Do you think this loss has a massive impact on the potential fortunes of Arsenal in the next 3 games, or?
I don't think so. I think that especially if Jorginho keeps his place in the team, which I think that he should, we will have enough midfield cover to dominate the ball. And Tierney gives more. I wouldn't be surprised to see Martinelli scoring some goals, because Tierney gives more overlapping runs and more support to Martinelli than maybe Zinchenko does going on the outside. Everyone expects us to invert. That's what most people would have prepared for. And then all of a sudden we're going to go back to having overlapping wingers, and that gives Martinelli space to go on and do what he does. So I don't think it will impact us in terms of results. But yeah, slight adjustment, and just hope that he recovers really well. And that's all I think of it, really. And
I did read that Kiwior has played left back a couple of times in his career. From what you've seen of Kiwior so far, obviously more so in the last 2 games, do you see him as someone that moving forward, if we were to sell Tierney, that Arteta sees as a potential left back, or do you think his profile is very much suited to backing up Gabriel?
I think backing up Gabriel and maybe covering for injuries and different things like that. Certainly not at this point in the season. I know this wasn't what you asked, but you know, that would mean that Rob Holding were to step in back to centre back, and so we definitely want to avoid that at all costs as much as possible.
I agree.
But yeah, I think that again, he needs to be a specialist. You know, football players are football players; they can do different things. But I think to go to the top level, you really need to niche yourself down into one particular position and say, "This is what I do. I'm the main person for this," and actually be pushing Gabriel to maybe start, and really, really pushing him. You know, we're a long way from that just now, and we're in a good place with him where he's good enough to be good enough, but also not giving the manager headaches right now. It's coming towards the end of the season. He'll have a big pre-season, and he'll be pushing Gabriel and have lots of opportunities next season.
And it's just come to my mind, we talked about Martinelli having signed the contract this season, Saka pretty much done, just waiting for an announcement. There's one player left in terms of young players that need to sign contracts. William Saliba, he's been ruled out for the rest of the season. He's had a great first season at Arsenal, so young but so important already. How confident are you that we will get a deal done with Saliba?
I'm 50-50 because he doesn't have, the issue with sending players on loan, yes, they go and develop, but they don't have a relationship with the club, especially when you buy them and they're really, really excited and you send them straight back out on loan. I think he needed the loan. We know that Arteta often loans people out not for football purposes, but to loan out for personal reasons, to develop as a person, stepping into the shoes, especially in England, the media is a little bit different. The football frenzy is maybe a little bit different, and especially being at a big 6 club. So I think bringing any young player into that fold is tough, and giving him some time to grow as a person where he's outside of his comfort zone because he's moved club, but he's still in France. So and then slowly bring that progress through. I think that was really smart, and I think that's why he's hit the ground running so well. But hopefully being second and being close, can Arteta sell them on the idea that we're going to be winning trophies? We were 8th, then we were 5th. Now we're 2nd. Stick with us one more year and we should be winning a trophy. This next season is going to be so crucial for all of these different factors because the team looked almost burnt out on that 3-game run. The 2-0 win against Newcastle turned it around. If they deal with another disappointing season of just not quite, it doesn't matter if we get to the penalty shootout of the final and lose the Premier League on goal difference. It doesn't matter how close we get. Lots of these players will feel that burnout and say, actually, I need a change. This next season is going to be the one that has to get trophies.
And I guess it's not necessarily a decision has to be made this summer, because we've seen players at Arsenal go into their final year's contract, but Saliba will have a year left next season. He's now injured. He's been injured for the last 6 weeks or so. But you're 50-50 on it. Can you cast your mind back to maybe November, December times when you were maybe talking about Saka and Martinelli's contracts and how confident you were about those two? Were you always more confident about those two signing than you are Saliba, or was it 50-50 with all of them?
I was always more confident about Saka and Martinelli signing. You know, Martinelli would constantly talk about how much he loved the club. Saka's from the academy. And Martinelli's only ever played for Arsenal in Europe, and Saka's only ever played for Arsenal, period. So this is what they know. Saliba has come from the French league. He's done very well when he was there last season. I think it was Saint Etienne he was at last season when he was on loan. So he has more confidence. Marseille last season, maybe you're right.
It was Saint Etienne the year before.
There you go. So he's played for a couple of teams in the French league. So if he does want to leave Arsenal, there are places he can go. He's more seasoned at other places. He will feel much more confidence that I'm this player wherever I go. I've done it 3 or 4 clubs. Saka and Martinelli might not feel that same level of confidence because this is the only place that they've done it. So, you know, I was always more confident about those guys. And, you know, we've heard rumours of, you know, difficult relations with him and Arteta. We don't know how true that is. Based on his performances, you wouldn't think so. But you just never know. Yeah,
and he has come out this season and actually agreed that the loans were probably better for his development. So that was good to hear. And I'm with you. I'm 50-50 on it, but I think he's as important as Saka and Martinelli is for the future of Arsenal, if not more, because you know, finding defenders that can play at the back and still have that rough edge in terms of their defensive attributes, I think is very difficult. So
he used to be a striker apparently.
Is it?
Yeah, that's why he's so good at school. That's why he scored that goal. He started off as a striker and slowly worked his way backwards. So he is a really accomplished, well-rounded football player.
Yeah, no, he is. There you go, people. We're going to have the last super chat here from Ricky will be the last question. But breaking news, William Saliba, as expected, out for the season. But surprisingly, Zinchenko is also out for the season. So Kieran Tierney in. And we'll see what he does for the remaining 3 games of the season and hope for the best. We've just passed 6 p.m. We've still got 1.9k here. So make sure you hit the like button. We're only on 400 likes. And like I said, I'm going to wrap it up with this question from Ricky. I love what Saliba and Gabriel have done. But when you look at Terry, Vidic, Kompany, Van Dijk, Diaz as centre-backs that have won the Premier League recently, do we have that?
I mean, most of those people are hitting their prime when they were older, and that, you know, we're talking about partnerships there. I think everybody there was an individual, apart from, I don't think Ferdinand was in there. Yeah, so, you know, they're all, you've named a bunch of centre-backs that don't necessarily play together. It's all about the partnerships when it comes to centre-backs. Do you know what I mean?
Modern day more so than maybe...
Yeah, for sure.
It's always been a...
No, I think it's always been the way. You know, Terry was the best centre-back probably in the Premier League, but specifically of his time, very physical era, you know, not necessarily a pure football player. Kompany is probably one of the best football players and big and physical and different things like that. You know, so I think so. I think they've got all the attributes to get there 100%, especially, I was going to say especially Saliba, but both of them
in different ways,
very different ways, and that's what you want. They do 2 very different things, and they back each other up very well. And the fact that Gabriel's come from France and speaks French, and Saliba's French, you know, it ties in really well together. But it's all about partnerships.
And Ricky, it's hard. I mean, you know, when you mention names like Terry, Vidic, Kompany, Van Dijk, Diaz, even though with Diaz I wouldn't name him with those 4 yet, but Diaz is a very good centre back, quality, world class. It's hard naming those names and then Gabriel and Saliba and asking can they make it, because to make it there they need to be playing at the highest level week in, week out, year in, year out, and doing what pretty much they've done the majority of this season, and you know, working well with each other, complementing each other and building.
You mentioned those names, but there's also names that are still very good but not quite that level. Matip has won a Premier League and a Champions League. Joe Gomez, you know, someone like Terry is like the Thierry Henry of defenders. You know, you can't say
He was next to Cahill, wasn't he?
he was, but towards the end he was, yeah. But he had other centre back partners earlier in his career,
Yeah, Carvalho
and Carvalho as well, and different things like that. Who, you know, he's not amazing. He's not mentioned in those types of names. So you know, you can't say can you go and win the Premier League without a striker like Thierry Henry? Well, you can, because people do. You know, but it's going to be different things for different teams for sure. But that's, you know, you're setting a very high bar. But it's a good point.
Completely agree. Listen, love for the super chats, people, every single one of you. Love for everyone that's engaged in the comment section, placed your votes earlier on in the video. Love to Nick for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to Nick's channel. It's in the title, it's right there. He's just been getting started, so make sure you show him some love. Go and subscribe to him on the road to 1K. So if you're not subscribed, go and subscribe. It's actually been quite a good live. I've enjoyed talking to you, my guy.
Anytime you want me, bro.
Love for coming on. You'll be seeing more of Nick, not only here, but he's on DR Sports too. So make sure you're subscribed over there. Make sure you're subscribed over here. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out, because we are wrapping it up now. I'm on Big Six on my channel later tonight. That's also in the title, 10 p.m. Love for the love, people, and we'll see you again real soon. Peace.